This is Christopher Key. I want to start off by apologizing for some of the things I'm going to say in this video. But more importantly, I want to apologize for what I allowed to happen to myself. What I allow a TSA person to do to me. What I allowed to happen to myself. How I compromised myself, all because I needed to get on an airplane from Baltimore so that I could get back home and get to the LSU Arkansas football game for business. And I just want to say I'm sorry that I allowed this to happen, and that I will not allow it to happen again. And after hearing this, I really would like for anybody out there to tell me what they would have done different, and by the law what I could have done different so that I would not have to go through this. Because I can promise you it will not happen to me again. I will not allow what happened to me in Baltimore to ever happen to me again. So that being said, I want to start off by letting you know what happened. I was in Baltimore, Maryland, and I was trying to get on an airplane back home, and I was in a line going through security checkpoint, and there were two separate lines, and the line I was in, I'm watching in the distance, and I see that all the people in this line are going through the full body scanners. But this other line, they're going through a metal detector. So when I get up and give the TSA officer my ID and he checks everything out, I then very discreetly proceed to cut across and go to the metal detector. And as I'm doing that, an officer who's in the middle stops me and says, "No, I'm to go this way," pointing to the full body scanner. And I'm like, "No ma'am, I'm just going through the metal detector." And she says, "You can't do that. Are you opting out?" I'm like, "No ma'am, I'm not opting out. I'm just going through the metal detector." And she said, "You have to go through that or opt out." I'm like, "Look, I know what the full body scanner does to the human body, and I'm not going through that." So she gets on her walkie-talkie and calls security. And a security man comes over, and he asked me to sit down, but it was much more than that. When this man came up to me and we made eye contact, I mean, it was just what I seen as being just pure evil, and he asked me to sit down, and I'm like, "No, I'm fine to stand." And he said, "Well then follow me." So we go through the little side entrance, and we go into the very front, and there's a little square, and it's got 2 feet on it, a very large square, and the officer, looking me dead in the eye, says, "Stand there." So I'm looking right back dead in his eyes, and I very purposely stand in between the 2 feet. And he says, "I said stand there." I said, "Look, I'm in the box." Okay, and he said, "Well, are you one of them?" I'm like, "What do you mean am I one of them?" I'm being very civil, but yes, I'm not disobeying, but I'm doing what you ask. Because you could just see in his face that he was so much enjoying this. So he calls for a supervisor on his walkie-talkie. And this supervisor comes over and says, "What's the problem?" And I said, "There is no problem. Y'all have 2 lines there, and I chose to go through the metal detector because I do not want to have my body radiated by the full body scanner. And, they're now telling me I'm opting out, and now I've got to be pretty much molested by this young man here." And he proceeded to say, "Look, we do not enjoy doing this. But in the order of safety and security, we have to do this." And I kind of put my hand on his shoulder, and I was like, "Look, you might not enjoy this, but that guy right there looks like he's about to really enjoy this, and I don't feel comfortable, and I'd like to get somebody else." And he said, "Look, if you want to get on your plane, then you have to go through this pat down." And I needed to get on my plane, so I was like, "Okay." He said, "Look, just stand there in the box. You don't have to stand in between the 2 feet." It was this guy, the supervisor, was very polite, very nice, but all of a sudden, still this TSA officer is just staring a hole through me. So I stand in between the 2 feet, and he goes through asking me some questions. Do I have anything in my pocket or anything in my front pockets? A bunch of other questions. And all the time I'm going through my head, knowing what's about to happen, because I've watched quite a few of the TSA videos about these guys and what they do with this full body pat down, and I'm just thinking to myself and getting more and more frustrated. And then he comes to the question and says, do you have any sensitive areas that I need to know about? And that caught me off guard, and I just said what I probably shouldn't have said, but knowing what was about to happen, the only thing that came to my mind is what came to my mind. And when he said, are there any sensitive areas that I need to know about, I said, yes, my dick, and don't touch it. And when I said that, the supervisor said, that's it, you're not getting on this plane. You're not getting on this plane. I was like, look, he asked me a question. I answered it. My private parts are very sensitive, and I don't want him to touch it. Well, what is wrong with that? He said, look, if you keep this up, I'll have you arrested for disorderly conduct. And at that point, I'm like, look, I haven't gotten disorderly yet, but I'm about to, because I know what you guys are doing. This is unlawful search and seizure, and it is completely and totally wrong. And at this time, another voice comes on his walkie-talkie, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy in a black suit, and he motions for the supervisor to come over. And the supervisor goes over, and they begin to talk to one another. And all of a sudden, I'm still looking at this TSA, and we're just staring eye to eye. And he comes back, and he says, do you want to go to jail? And I very politely said, no, sir. He says, do you want to get on this plane? I said, yes, sir, I need to get on this plane. He said, well, you need to apologize. I said, apologize? He said, yes, you need to apologize to him. So I said, okay. I said to the TSA officer, I'm sorry, I told you my dick was sensitive, but again, don't touch it. And the supervisor said, look, okay, but you're still going to have to go through with this pat down, or you won't get on your plane, and we'll have you arrested. And at that moment, I should have done the right thing, and I should have went ahead and went to jail. But like I said earlier, I needed to get on this plane because of business, and needed to get back home to get to the Arkansas LSU game. So I said, okay. I was like, go ahead and have your fun. So I stand back in the box, and this TSA officer proceeds to do his pat down, and I've never been touched by another man, and this was the most disgusting thing I've ever been through in my life, where he took his hands and came all the way up this one leg, all the way up into my scrotum, and then went up the other leg into my scrotum. And I'm like, what are you looking for? I mean, what's your problem? I mean, I could have very easily went through this metal detector and like, look, are you? I was like, and then he takes his hands and pulls my pants out and sticks his hands inside my pants and goes through the right side and in the back, and then he comes across on the left side, hands in my pants, and goes around. I'm like, how is this necessary? And then he takes his hands on the back of my right butt cheek, and he goes front hands, and then back hands, and then front hands and back hands down my right butt cheek, And then he does the same thing on my left butt cheek. Front, back, and then on my chest he does the same thing, front, back, front, on both sides. I mean, it was beyond degrading and disgusting. Something that I would never want anybody else to have to go through in the sake of supposedly security. And then he finished, and I got all my stuff back. I was trying to record everything earlier, and he saw what I was doing and cut my pen off. And then I get my camera, and I politely, and I'll show you here in a second, go over to the officer, and I ask him, you know, look, I was not being disrespectful and whatnot. It's just that my penis is very sensitive, and I don't feel comfortable with another man touching it. And as I'm saying that, the TSA officer, you'll see in this video, walks up and says he's recording, and he's been recording the entire time. And then the officer asked me, are you recording? I'm like, yes, I'm recording this. I mean, how's it wrong for me recording this? And then I tried to tell him that, look, you know, those x-ray machines are very bad for the human body, and he proceeds to say they're not x-rays, they're microwaves. Same difference, they're very, very bad for you. So I want to let you see, you know, what happened on the video here, so you can see what happened.
Sir, can I ask him something real quick? I want to ask him something real quick. Hey.
Okay, here's the TSA officer, if we can get that.
Hey, I was not being disrespectful. I know what happens when you go through those things and get radiated. Okay, and just because I chose to opt out, which I did, I pat down, and when he asked me if I had any parts that were sensitive.
Okay, right here, you know, you can see the guy's foot. This is the TSA officer coming up, and he's asking me if I have any sensitive areas, and I say, yeah, my penis, and it very much is very sensitive. So let's go on.
My penis is.
So why are you recording? He's been the whole time. Why have you been recording?
Because I like to know what's going on.
Why are you playing the game?
I'm not playing the game. I just like to know what's happening. Why was I chosen to have to opt out whenever we could have went through this other things?
Once you go through this system, once you get chosen, there's nothing personal.
Nothing personal.
You're being.
Do you know how much X-rays are going through those things? They're not good for you. Thank you, sir.
So you heard him say they're not X-rays, they're microwaves. I want you guys to know that I'm mad as hell now, and I'm not going to take this anymore. And it's gotten to a point where what is happening here in America, where we're sacrificing our liberty for the sake of security, I believe is very wrong, and I would like to know what you guys think out there. So please let me know what you would have done in this situation, and what I could do in other situations to keep this from happening. So thank you.